Money here on CCTV News. I'm Michael Wong. Experts say that nearly 40 million Chinese students suffer from some form of disillusion in their academic endeavors. This has created a host of psychological concerns that one psychiatrist is aiming to treat. Join us this week as we explore Very Education, a school with a business model that combines education with games.
This might look like an art school, but it is actually a program designed to help children with psychological issues. Very Education is a company that provides psychological guidance for troubled children, helping them become the angels they once were.
In China today, we focus a lot on academic studies, but a lot of students don't connect with them. So we use psychology to popularize some basic instruction methods that help the children grow healthily.
Assisting the healthy development of these children has proven profitable. Receiving only 100 clients per year, this company has a yearly turnover of 30 million yuan. That's about $5 million US. It has also received a 100 million yuan investment from internet giant Tencent. In 2000, Song Xiaowei, a graduate of psychology from the Renmin University of China, opened a small psychological counseling office. From the early days on, Song realized that most of the children that came to see him suffered from study weariness. According to the National Bureau of Statistics, China's GDP per capita has already exceeded 6,000 US. As people's lives improve, psychological problems are getting ever more attention.
The accumulation of wealth in the society has an effect on the psychological development in adolescence.
Qiao Guina is the company's admissions officer. Her job is to find out what problems the children have. Among them, school weariness and rebellious tendencies are common. School weariness and rebellious behavior are increasingly becoming the headaches of Chinese parents. Song Xiaowei's research shows that 19.34% of Chinese youth have psychological problems. This means that 1 in 5 students have obvious symptoms, and that around 40 million out of China's 200 million students are sick of school or have quit entirely. These numbers are troubling to any parent. But to Song Xiaowei, they also hide a huge business opportunity.
A lot of the children that come to me don't like going to school or don't get along with their parents, or they might not get on with people at school. I met more and more kids like this, and I've done research on youth psychology, so I felt that there was a need for people like me.
In 2003, using his professional background, Song Xiaowei established Very Education, targeting school weariness, internet addiction, learning difficulties, and other problems. According to Sina News, China currently has only 1 psychologist per 93,000 inhabitants. Realizing the huge demand, Song Xiaowei chose to target young patients.
We have 150 employees and a turnover of 30 million yuan. But if we realize our potential, I'm confident we can exceed 100 million.
In only 10 years, Song has transformed himself from psychiatrist to successful businessman.
Diligence is the vehicle on the paths of mountains of books. That's an old Chinese proverb. Here in China, the importance placed on academics is a time-honored tradition that dates back thousands of years. Thus, combining the thought of education with fun and games is rather unconventional here. Joining me to talk about Very Education is Professor Jia Ning, Deputy Director at the China Business Case Center at Tsinghua University. Thank you very much, Professor,
Thank you
for joining us. So, Very Education, it's an institute that offers psychological counseling to Chinese students who may be a little bit disillusioned with school, have trouble studying, right? A little bit wary of studying. Talk to us first about the market positioning of Very Education.
Sure. I think what Very Education offers is a very nice complement to our existing sort of general education system. I mean, China's general education market is saturated, but the problem is our schools and our teachers are predominantly focused on teaching knowledge and skills, right? And our whole education system is exam-oriented. So if our general education market or our schools are not offering enough counseling or tutoring, in terms of coaching the emotional intelligence of the students, I think what Very Education does and other similar institutions, they actually can come in and serve as a nice sort of way to fill in that void, right?
So what are some of the challenges in opening a practice like Very Education then?
Well, I think the number one challenge is finding a team of qualified professionals, because if you look at the psychological counseling education market in China, it's not as developed as it is in some of the Western countries, including the United States. So if Very Education continues to expand, whether or not the company is able to find a team of highly qualified professionals, that may be a potential challenge. And the second challenge is customization. We know that unlike general education, psychological counseling and treatment requires a high-touch solution, right? So it requires a lot of face-to-face time with the patient. It requires detailed assessment of each patient condition and the design of a highly customized treatment program, right? So the fact that each program needs to be customized, it's going to be difficult for the company to scale, right, in the future. And the third challenge is actually performance evaluation, right? So when you're treating a patient, especially when it comes to psychological treatment, well, how do you evaluate the effectiveness of the program, right? So that can be a potential challenge. So how do we quantify the results and present them to the parents, for example, right? So that could be a potential challenge. And a fourth challenge is actually competition, right? So as Very Education is starting out, it's a relatively small company, so I'm sure there are other competitors out there.
So the founder of Very Education, he was in academia before he began his business. He was a psychiatrist as well, and we're seeing this transitioning happening more and more, going from academia into entrepreneurship. So you're a professor, you also teach private equity as well as venture capital, so you sort of straddle both worlds, I would say. What are some of the advantages of making this transition, and perhaps what are some of the disadvantages as well?
I think for those academics turned entrepreneurs or businessmen, they're typically experts in their respective academic disciplines. So the typical path of transition is, first of all, as a scientist, is they do the research, they come up with a new invention, and they patent it and try to commercialize the research output, right? So for these people, they're typically very strong on research and on development, but less strong on sales and marketing side, right? So I think that's one potential challenge. Another common challenge I observe is the fact that academics are typically motivated by self-interest and by curiosity, right? So they do research because this is something that they're genuinely interested in, not because this is something that potentially can make them like a billionaire, right? But when you run a company, your personal preference, your personal taste, your personal interest doesn't really matter that much anymore, right? So it's you do the kind of research that markets requires, right? So this change of mentality can be difficult for some professors or academics. And also, when you're academic, it's mostly about individual success, right? Individual sort of winning, right? But when it comes to running a company, at the end, it's about celebrating group accomplishments.
So Mr. Song, the founder, is targeting a very specific subsegment as his customer base. He's not just targeting students, but students in need of psychological assistance. Do the numbers add up for him? And what makes him so certain these students are actually treatable? That's coming up next.